Merchants, adventurers, and state officials had high hopes of expanding trade, especially for the spices of the East. The spices, which were needed to preserve and flavor food, were very expensive after Arab middlemen shipped them to Europe. Europeans also had hopes of finding precious metals. During the 15th and 16th centuries, leaders of several European nations sponsored expeditions abroad in the hope that explorers would find great wealth and vast undiscovered lands. In the late 13th century, Marco Polo traveled from Venice to the Chinese court of the great Mongol ruler Kublai Khan and wrote an account of his experiences, entitled The Travels. Many Europeans read the book and were fascinated by what they imagined as the exotic East.
At the end of the 15th century, it was nearly impossible to reach Asia from Europe by land. The route was long and arduous, and encounters with hostile armies were difficult to avoid. Columbus has a different idea. Why not sail west across the Atlantic instead of around the massive African continent? The young navigator's logic was sound, but his math was faulty. He argued that the circumference of the earth was much smaller than his contemporaneous believed it was. Accordingly, he believed that the journey by boat from Europe to Asia should be not only possible but comparatively easy. He presented his plans to officials in Portugal and England, but it was not until 1491 that he found a sympathetic audience: the Spanish monarchs Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabel of Castile.
Columbus pursued Queen Isabel of Spain to finance an exploratory expedition. Columbus wanted fame and fortune. Ferdinand and Isabella wanted the same, along with the opportunity to export Catholicism to lands across the globe. Columbus' contract with the Spanish rulers promised that he could keep 10% of whatever riches he found, along with a noble title and the governmentship of any lands he should encounter.
For months, Columbus sailed from island to island in what we know as the Caribbean, looking for the pearls, precious stones, gold, silver, spices, and other objects and merchandise that he had promised to his Spanish patrons. But he did not find much. Columbus believed he had reached Asia. After 3 voyages, he had still not found a route through the other islands to what he believed was the Asian mainland. In his 4 voyages, Columbus reached all the major Caribbean islands and Honduras in Central America, all of which he called the Indies. Instead of the material riches he had promised the Spanish monarchs, he sent some 500 slaves to Queen Isabella. In 1502, cleared of the most serious charges but stripped of his noble titles, the aging Columbus persuaded the Spanish king to pay for one last trip across the Atlantic.
His journey kicked off centuries of exploration and exploitation on the American continents. The sequences of his explorations were severe for the native populations of the areas he and the conquistadors conquered. Disease and environmental change resulted in the destruction of the majority of the native population over time, while Europeans continued to extract natural resources from these territories. Today, Columbus has a mixed legacy. He is remembered as a daring and path-breaking explorer who transformed the New World, yet his actions also unleashed changes that will eventually devastate the native population he and his fellow explorers encountered.
Thank you for your time. Hope you understand.